Rosie and
Hello, welcome everybody. Happy Monday. We're glad to be here to wrap up our Monday with you. And we are looking at different topics. And it's so funny because Jen was just telling me she's going to wear pink or red for the rest of the week as we celebrate Valentine's Day. And our love and our affinity for all the people in our lives. And one of the things we thought we should talk about was letting people go and how to transition people out of the business when they're not a fit. And that's actually a sign of love and appreciation and value and respect, for them and your organization. And when it's not working, they know it's not working. They can feel it. And I think sometimes we let that go on too long and we pretend it's okay. And our people are watching, and that can erode trust and respect. And we are worried about them. So that's one of the reasons we don't let people go. It's like, it's February 8th, ladies. Are you crazy talking about this on February 8th? But I had to help somebody last week, let somebody go. And it's the right decision. And, when they told their staff is like, no problem. Because they knew it wasn't working out. They're like, let's figure out how to divvy this up. Let's figure out what extensions we need to do. What do we need to do to communicate to the clients? So it can be a really positive thing, as ugly as it feels. I think it's probably the top thing on our list that we all would say we hate to do and don't ever want to do, but it can be really positive when handled well. So we thought we would explore that. So I don't know, Jen, if there's anything else on the setup you want to say or direction you want to go first.
well, I think it's like when to know, right? When to know it's time to let go. Then sort of the how, maybe, and perhaps mistakes. I think that's probably the scope. In a future session, because knowing us, that'll take more than the 20 minutes. But another topic that's attached is how to let people go that are finished with us, and how to make that powerful and meaningful and positive. Which is a challenge too. But I think this issue of when to know you're done. We spend so much time in our leadership development programs teaching people how to manage conflict and how to give people the benefit of best intentions and how to hopefully interpret them and how to sit down and talk about how can I help you improve and what can we do together to improve these circumstances. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to help people grow, develop, learn, and get better. And so sometimes when we're doing that, people will say to us, all right, when do you give up? When is enough enough? And I wish there was an answer. Well, you've performance managed them through 3 conversations or 6 conversations, like there was this formula.
Or 90 days, like it's a...
Well, and it can be for a performance improvement plan, right? So I think when we're talking about poor performance, the first thing is that there have to be clear expectations for improved performance. So, ideally, there are clear expectations for what good performance is from the first day I start. So I'm aspiring to that. And when I'm not doing it, you can point out, well, here are the expectations for good performance, and here's where you're falling short. So these are the gaps, and this is what you need to do to improve. And we would have conversations like that, and it would be clear what's expected, where I am, and what the gap is. That's ideal for performance management, because then you as a leader, you don't feel guilty like, gosh, I'm holding them to some secret standard. And you know that you're being clear about where the gaps are and what they need to do to improve. Sometimes we don't have really clear expectations of what good performance looks like, but we know that they're not doing it. And then I think it's a different story. And I don't know if you want to pick up there, Tamera, or...
Yeah. Well, I think it's a different story, so we can get better at setting expectations. I think that's probably the first thing, is that we can reflect and say, where have we not been clear? And it's probably not just with that one individual, by the way. It's probably across the team that we find we can improve our expectations, communications, and checking back in and managing against performance. And we have to do that. I think sometimes we get told, by leaders, it's like they're professionals. Why do I have to manage them? And it's because we have expectations, and we need to, explain and communicate what those expectations are, not assume. We all know what happens when I assume that you know what the expectations should be, but they don't, and they're unique. They're unique to our group, they're unique to our firm, they're unique to a client, and so we have to communicate what those expectations are. I think it gets tricky when it's behavioral expectations. And I think that might be the place where like something feels off. They don't feel respectful, or they don't feel truthful, or they, feel sneaky, or, they're maybe mean to people, in their communications or interactions or email or whatever it might be. And so, again, the better job that we do, we've talked about values before, the better job we talk about values, I can point back to that and talk about expectations and where it might be differing and have a conversation. But at some point, it might just mean this isn't how we work here, and this isn't working out. And that is a tough call. But if you and I have said, if we were looking and managing an employee, and you and I have said, we've done everything, we've had the conversations. And one of the things we always advise is listen to your gut and trust your gut. I still want to do all the things right by that individual and give them the opportunity and put them on a performance plan if that's the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, we have to listen to our gut and say, this isn't working out. And it's the effort's too much, or the behaviors are not changing, or there's just something not working. We can just say it's not working out. So I think that's how I would look at the, expectation side of it.
Yeah. And I think, Tamera, as specific as we could be about both behavior and skill or result, I think those are the three things you're looking at: is what is their behavior or mindset? If there's an issue there, what does their skill level appear to be based upon the results or output that they're producing? And those are the things we're trying to help people improve.
Right.
And so you're going to go through some sort of feedback process, as you shared. And we've covered that before in an HR Huddle. If you go to our YouTube channel and access the HR Huddle files, it's, I don't know, 3 or 4 HR Huddles ago, we talked about performance feedback and using keep, stop, start, or expectation, observation, inquiry as ways of delivering feedback. But you're going to go through that loop at least 3 times, I think. The first time is, hey, I don't know if you're aware, but this is what's expected. This is what we're seeing instead. This is what we need to see in order for you to be performing at expectation or behaving as expected. And then, let's get together in a couple weeks and see how you're doing. Or what help can I give you in getting there? Sometimes we have to say that, but we'll go through that cycle. The first time is sort of like education, information. I'm not sure if you were aware, or I just want to make sure you're aware. The second time is like, we've talked about this before. We're still not seeing it, or now we're seeing something else that doesn't work, and get them to talk to you about it and try to figure out what the root cause is and see what you could do to support them in improving. And then obviously conversation 1 and 2 and 3, we're documenting an email recap afterwards to say, hey, thanks for taking the time. Here's what is expected. Here's what you committed to do. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's when we'll meet again. So you go through a couple cycles of that. If they're still not improving, depending on your state laws, you probably need to put them on a formal warning system of some kind. And every state has a different set of rules here. So we're not going to act like state labor attorneys and tell you which rules to follow. You follow your state rules, federal rules, but state rules too. And I know in certain states we have to have a written performance improvement plan. They may specify how many days that plan has to run for. I think it's usually about 90 because you want to give people time to improve. You don't want to wait too long to put them on a PIP, performance improvement plan, if there is some time clock associated with that of any length, because if they're really not working out, their behavior is really not acceptable, their performance really is dragging the team down, you don't want to talk to them, then put them on a PIP. And now almost a year has passed with this ridiculousness. So that's something to be thinking about. You might, depending on how egregious it is, speed that process up. But anyway, you then put them in a formal performance improvement plan. And we see people do that, and they're not specific about what performance improvement expectations look like. And so we can't tell. We're supposed to assess again in 60 days. We can't tell. or they think I did it all. And it was because they were so generally written that, so we have to be as specific as possible. It is a good idea. Certainly you have to get HR involved if you have HR in your firm. If you're going to a PIP or you're going to fire somebody, it's okay and not a bad idea to talk to labor counsel and make sure you know what the rules are and what the do's and don'ts are of that conversation. But it is okay to let people go. It's 100% okay to let someone not performing or not behaving as expected to leave your firm. And you should do it. It will elevate people and everybody else will feel better because they're watching all of that.
Right. Exactly. Well, and as HR professionals, the HR professionals that, listening to this, outlining that process, that you just walk through, those steps, I think is helpful for the performance manager. But I don't know that I would let them do it alone, like you said, if they are putting them on a PIP, be involved. Yes. Or have a partner involved, have somebody else. So it's not he said, she said, and that's where that recap is so important. But I think when people can start to see the steps in the process, then we can just, really try to help that person turn around and succeed. And we've seen it happen. But we've also seen it, we just keep perpetuating it. Well, there was this extenuating circumstance here, or this happened here. Like we start making reasons and excuses. And that's where it's like, no, it's not working. And we're trying to force it to work. We're trying to make it work. And that's where we have to say, it's time. It's time to pull the trigger. It's time to let them go. And sometimes we have to do that in February during busy season. We'd like to wait till April or May, but sometimes that's just really not the right answer. It's not the right answer for our team or for our clients. So whenever you do it, get somebody else involved and make it short and sweet. And we don't need to get into arguments at that point. Why? It's probably not a surprise. Our experience, I would say, is when we sit down to have the conversation, say this isn't working out and it's time to terminate the position, most of the time they're not surprised. Sometimes if they don't have the awareness and that was one of the issues, they might be, or they might argue or feel defensive. But for the most part, they know. And it's actually a relief. We like to say we can, close our door to open another door. And how can we, support them in, finding something where they can be successful, use their gifts, and, feel like they're winning. We want people to feel like they're winning. And if they're not winning with us and we can't find another position, maybe we look at that too. But if we can't find it, then we want to be swift, short, to the point, and, help that transition, process. And I think part of that is the timing with the individual. And then to the appropriate leaders, maybe in advance to let them know that's happening, IT, all those things that we need to do from a transition perspective, but then the team and then the clients. And we have to have a plan of communications, a chain of communications ready to go, when we pull that trigger. And, depending on their visibility and their reach, it's going to vary. A manager might be different than a staff, or an intern. But we still should have a, thought through plan, communication plan for how we're going to let people know and what the impact is. And sometimes we don't have all the answers. We got to figure that out. And that's okay to say that. But I would say that then I would be honest and transparent about that. And how do we transition? So.
Yeah, anytime you do this, people get a little bit insecure. The survivors are insecure a little bit. And they want to know, why'd that happen? Why is she gone? Did she quit? They'll ask, and so, we can't say, it's not professional to say. And so, but people can kind of tell because people who give their notice, they're here for 2 weeks and we wish them well and they do some kind of transition or whatever it may be. And people who we fire or have to let go, they're abruptly gone. We don't give them 2 weeks, and you shouldn't give them 2 weeks if you ask them to leave, unless they are the most loyal and wonderful person and super exceptional that you would have them hang out, because all they're going to do is sort of grumble. And that's your best case. And your worst case is that they'll do negative things while they're still around. So, so people can tell, but you're not going to confirm, yes, we let her go for performance or any of those kinds of things. You're going to say it isn't professional for me to comment on someone else's employment experience with our firm, and you wouldn't want me to talk about yours with our firm to someone else either. So, but having your partners armed with frequently asked questions and other operational leaders and your managers too, because they'll get asked, about it is important. Even if it's an intern, it's somebody who's been transient and you didn't know them very long, you still have to sort of explain what we did. And not the gory details of why or anything, but just, you might have noticed that so-and-so isn't here today. And we've transitioned their work to the other person. And if you have any questions, see me, and then the partners will all echo that and pair it identically. Well, why is so-and-so gone? Well, I can't comment on that. It wouldn't be professional for me to, but let's focus on what we're going to do now to transition the work that they had. And just, we don't entertain the gory conversation, and we focus on the future, focus on what's next. And, so I think that that's really important. I also think every firm should have an exit checklist, and I don't care how big you are, you need an exit checklist that you go through that says, here are all the things that we do when it's time for someone to leave. They include this communications plan Tamera talked about, and you mentioned IT and the passwords. I'm in the process of helping one of our team members transition over time. They're going over time, and it's sad, but awesome at the same time. But there's a lot to it. If you've been here for any length of time, there's a lot just on the IT side and file side and passwords and usernames and accounts and all that stuff. And yes, we have systems to track those things, but really acclimating whoever's coming in behind you to them is really critical. And so having that exit checklist makes it so that you might not forget some very important things. Security on your facility, as an example, for those of you who are still have office buildings, making sure that we're clear and all of that's been changed, and ID badges and anything else that might be out there. So if you don't have that, then you're going to end up missing things, and then you end up maybe having to have some back-end communications that are awkward and uncomfortable. So you want to have all that planned in advance.
I think that's such a good point. And, you said no matter what size you are, and I think smaller, you could say, well, we don't have that happen very often. That's the exact reason to do it, because we forget. And it's like we have to recreate it every single time. And so I know we go through that learning sometimes too. It's like, we need to document this. But I also think, as I was listening, Jen, there's probably some nuances by group or department you're in, or if you're operations or client facing, that we should probably capture also, that there's some considerations, maybe from a client perspective, or maybe from projects, or if they're involved in sales opportunities, depending on their role. There's probably some one-offs, if you will, or individual things that we need to consider, but we need to remember to ask, I guess is my point. And that should be on the checklist. Does this apply to you? And there's probably a whole bunch of things that we need to, make sure that we're looking at. So, and again, make that swift, that way we're not going back and forth. We're not, we're organized. Here's what we need to do.
Tamera, you talked a little bit about these people should be let go so they could go somewhere and win. And I think that that's such an important idea that can make us feel better as we're letting people go. And by the way, people include partners. Sometimes, Tamera and I have done our fair share of helping firms part with partners that just don't work anymore. The relationship isn't working. So we're not just talking about staff here, but when somebody's not living up to expectations, when their behavior doesn't match our values and our culture, when their performance isn't meeting expectations, when they're constantly, getting feedback that they're not quite measuring up, they're in kind of a no man's land or a purgatory or something. They're not winning. And maybe they accidentally got on our path or got to a place in the path, me or away from my clients' firms, and they thank me. They come up to me and thank me. They thank me for the way we handled it, but more importantly, they're like, thank you for getting me out of that, because I really was spinning my wheels. I really was, spiraling or really not winning. And when you pushed me out, then I found my way. I found where I needed to go next. I got going on the right road. I got off on an access road or something, and you pushed me back onto the road that I needed to be on. So, I think that we need to realize that when somebody's not fitting with us, it doesn't mean that they can't have success somewhere else. And in fact, they may be very successful in the current vocation, or they may leave and find a completely different vocation or occupation. And so letting them persist in a unwinning kind of complaining about them mode is not good for the business, but it's really not cool to them either.
I think it also elevates us. So I think that's something we forget about too. We're so worried, and I know capacity is a number one challenge, and just the thought, I know sometimes we operate and manage by somebody's better than nobody, and we do not subscribe to that. We do not believe that that is true, because you start to manage at the lowest common denominator, and that brings your whole team down. And instead, if we manage, at the highest, possible, brightest, that's what you're going to get from your team. And when we have somebody leave, then that opens up an opportunity that we don't even know, who's going to come and, grace us with their gifts and their talents and their new perspective. So that's hard to think about in the moment when I'm looking at the work and the clients and the impact of the team. But that's something else to keep in mind. Not only are we going to help that person win, but it will elevate us and help us win in, our new future, our new, with our new people, whatever new processes. Maybe it's just reorganizing how we're doing things, streamlining, simplifying. Maybe there's some things we could do, but often it's a new person that's going to come in, and we're like, where have you been?
Right.
And that wouldn't have been there. So,
right. This whole process takes courage and compassion, and not denial, and not,
tomorrow,
not procrastination. That's, denial, procrastination, not wimpiness. It requires our best self show up, our strongest, best self. And if you need help along the way, communicate with us. We have resources, all sorts of resources. I was thinking about, I wrote a blog, long time ago, that you are better off without them. It's on our blog, convergencecoaching.com/blog. You are better off without them, which just talks about the relief that all the people we've ever coached through this process feel. And almost every person that's listening to this, you probably have somebody in your organization that deserves to be set on the right path. And maybe not right this second, because you haven't taken the steps to really discuss what's not working. But perhaps they should be set free, and your organization will be lighter when you do it. So
awesome. Well, there's more to talk about with this topic and other topics. We hope you have a great, productive week. We'll continue next week, same time, same station. So we look forward to seeing you. Let us know if you have any questions or thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. So have a great one.
bye.
Bye.